The night of the gala arrived faster than anyone expected. The theater was packed, every seat filled, every camera aimed at the stage. Whispers filled the aisles, not about Isabella, but about her. The mysterious dancer from the rehearsal. Video. The one people were now calling the Silent Swan. Alina stood backstage, heart pounding, costume fitting perfectly, but the weight of her past still resting on her shoulders. She had danced before thousands before, but this felt different. This wasn't just a performance, right? This was a return. Isabella was nowhere to be seen. Hours before curtain, she had stormed out after hearing the final cast list. Alina's name was printed in black and white lead role. Isabella had argued, threatened to call sponsors, but the board had already made its decision. The viral video had sealed it. The audience wanted Alina, and there was no denying it. Mr. Cade paced nervously behind the curtain. He knew the backlash could be enormous. Powerful people were watching. And one of them, the man from the balcony, had made his threat clear. Alina could dance, but the moment the performance ended, he would reveal a scandal from her past. Something that could still destroy her reputation. He held the file like a weapon, waiting for his cue. But Alina didn't hesitate. As the music began and the spotlight found her again, she danced like her soul was on fire. The audience sat breathless. Every motion told her story. The rise, the fall, the silence, and now the return. Even the dancers backstage watched. In stunned silence, when the final note ended, the room erupted. Applause thundered through the hall. People stood. Some had tears in their eyes. She had done it. She hadn't just reclaimed the stage, she had owned it, just as the curtain fell. A voice echoed through the theater. It wasn't from the stage or the control room. 'Twas Maya standing at the front of the audience. She held a mic in one hand and something else in the other, documents. Real ones. Proof of how Alina's career had been sabotaged all those years ago. She read every word aloud. Emails, canceled contracts. A written order signed by the man who now sat frozen in his chair. The audience turned. So did the cameras. The man stood and walked out, face pale, security close behind. The theater went silent again. Then erupted. Cheers. Applause. The truth had finally come out. But just as Alina walked off stage, breathless and overwhelmed, Mr. Cade approached her with a strange look. "There's something else," he said quietly. "Your old audition tape. The one we thought was lost. We found it, and there's more than one dancer in it." He handed her a flash drive. Alina frowned, confused. "You weren't the only one targeted," he said. "This was bigger than you think." Alina looked down at the drive, heart racing. The performance was over, but the real story had only just begun. Back in the quiet of her dressing room, Alina sat holding the flash drive, her fingers trembling just slightly. The roar of the crowd still echoed faintly through the theater walls, but in here, everything felt still. For the first time in years, she wasn't hiding in the shadows. She had danced not for approval or revenge, but for herself. And now, the truth that once crushed her had finally come to light. Maya knocked softly before stepping in. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "I should have said something back then," she whispered. "I was scared, but that's no excuse." Alina nodded, not with anger, but with understanding. They both had been victims of silence. But tonight, Maya had broken hers on in doing so. Helped Alina reclaim her voice. The company board quickly issued a public statement, cutting ties with the man responsible for the scandal and praising Alina for her strength and artistry. Offers poured in from directors across the world. Interviews, headlines, opportunities she never thought she'd see again. But Alina didn't rush. She stayed grounded. For her, it wasn't about fame anymore. It was about dancing on her own terms, with honesty, and giving space to others who had been silenced like her. Isabella didn't return to the company. Some said she left ballet entirely, others whispered she had moved abroad. But in the end, her story faded, while Alina's rose. Alina walked out of the theater late that night, city lights glowing above. She had survived betrayal, buried truth, and public judgment. But more than anything, she had proven that resilience, grace, and truth could rewrite even the most broken story. She didn't just win the lead role, she took back her life, and this time, no one could take it from her. The auditorium was buzzing with excitement. Cameras clicked, dancers warmed up, and stage managers shouted last-minute directions. It was the final rehearsal for one of the most prestigious ballet performances of the year. At the center of it, all stood Isabella, the star ballerina, loved by the press, feared by her peers. With every pirouette, she dazzled. With every glance, she intimidated. She had worked hard for the spotlight, and she wasn't about to share it with anyone. Backstage, a young woman named Alina quietly swept the floor and arranged costumes. She wasn't a dancer. At least, no one saw her that way. Dressed in plain clothes with a calm demeanor, she moved unnoticed among the chaos. But behind her quiet eyes hid a passion that had once burned bright, a passion for dance that life had forced her to bury. Isabella spotted her while fixing the ribbons on her ballet shoes. With a sharp tone and an impatient wave, she ordered Alina to kneel and tie them for her. Laughter rippled through the dressing room as the so-called nobody obeyed without a word. No one knew her name. No one cared. She was just there to serve. But something changed in that moment. Not in Isabella, but in Alina. She looked at those satin shoes, and something inside her stirred. What happened next left the entire production team speechless. A last-minute injury, a desperate search for a replacement, and one name whispered by the choreographer, almost in disbelief. Alina. But how did a woman treated like a servant end up stealing the stage from a famous ballerina? And what hidden past did Alina carry that no one dared to ask about? The truth would shock everyone, and it was just about to unfold. Everyone backstage was stunned. The choreographer's voice had cracked when he said Alina's name, like he wasn't sure if he was remembering right or making a mistake. A few dancers snickered, others froze. Isabella, holding an ice pack to her ankle, stared in disbelief. Her, that girl. She scoffed. She's not even trained. But the director didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on Alina, as if something long buried had suddenly come to the surface. Alina didn't say anything. She didn't ask why. She simply stood up, her hands still, dusted with glitter from someone else's costume, and walked toward the center of the stage. She moved quietly, but her steps had a strange calm, like this wasn't new to her. Like her body remembered something her mind had tried to forget. Years ago, Alina had danced under a different name. She had trained with world-class teachers, earned standing ovations, and was once called a rising star in classical ballet. But after a tragic accident and a choice that left her broken, she vanished from the spotlight without warning. No one connected that rising star to the woman quietly folding tights backstage. Not until now, as the music started, whispers echoed across the room. The lighting tech paused. The assistant director leaned forward. Even the orchestra, already packed up, turned their heads. Alina hadn't even danced yet, but something about her presence pulled all eyes in. Isabella watched from the corner, her pride turning into something darker, confusion, maybe even fear. But Alina's past wasn't just filled with applause, held secrets, pain, and someone who still wasn't ready for her return. What would happen if the truth came out, and who might try to stop her before she ever took the stage again? The room was silent, but Alina's heart pounded like a drum in her chest. As she stepped to center stage, the smooth floor under her feet felt familiar, almost like it had been waiting for her return. The spotlight hit her face, and for a second, the past and present blurred. She could almost hear the applause from years ago. But this wasn't a comeback. Not yet. This was survival. She had one chance to prove she still belonged here, and that she was more than the girl who tied shoes. Backstage in the shadows, Isabella sat rigid, her ankle throbbing, her pride bruised more than her body. She couldn't look away. Watching Alina stretch and rise onto her toes with a grace that looked untouched by time felt like watching her own crown slip. She had spent years climbing to the top, sacrificing, pleasing sponsors, staying in peak form, and now out. Of nowhere, a silent girl had stepped into her light. And worse, the crew seemed mesmerized. The same people who once scrambled for Isabella's approval now whispered about Alina. Backstage, some of the dancers whispered too, but for different reasons. One of them, Maya, knew Alina from long ago. They had trained together, competed side by side. Maya remembered the scandal that made Alina disappear, a mistake, a loss, and a powerful name behind it all. If Alina was truly back, Maya wondered. What else might rise to the surface? Meanwhile, the director, Mr. Cade, paced in the corner. He hadn't seen Alina in years. When he had first trained her, she was raw talent and fire, too much of both. And now here she was, calm but unreadable. He knew she had the skill, but he also knew the damage that had once followed her. Letting her on stage again was risky. The investors, the press, the prima ballerina, everything was on the line. Alina felt the tension too. She could feel every pair of eyes, curious, doubtful, threatened, waiting to see if she'd fall. She didn't blame them. She wasn't sure what would happen either, but she knew one thing. This was no longer about replacing someone for one night. This was about unfinished business. And someone in that building knew exactly what they had done to her years ago. They just didn't expect her to come back with nothing left to lose. Alina stood in the rehearsal hall, waiting for the music to begin. The stage lights burned down on her like a test. Every step she took now would either remind them of why she vanished or force them to see what they'd ignored all along. Her breath slowed, her muscles tightened. She'd trained herself to hold pain and fear in the same place she once held joy, and now all of it was surfacing. The music began, and with it, the room transformed. Each movement was precise, but more than that, it was raw. Alina didn't just dance. She told the story with her entire body. Every leap felt like defiance. Every spin like a reclaiming of something stolen. Whispers turned to stunned silence. Even the assistant director, who had been doubtful from the start, found himself inching closer. He had seen talent before, but this was something else. This was someone fighting for the truth through every count of the music. Isabella watched with clenched fists. She had always believed she deserved the spotlight, not just for her talent, but for how hard she worked to keep it. But now, the audience wasn't watching her anymore. And worse, they were starting to remember Alina, not the girl who fetched coffee and tied shoes, but the prodigy who was once set to be the face of the ballet world before everything came. Crashing down in the wings, Maya struggled with a decision she hadn't voiced in years. She knew why Alina had been erased. She had been there, and she had stayed silent. But now, with Alina dancing like nothing could break her, Maya began to feel the weight of her silence crack. Up in the balcony, a man in a dark suit watched the scene unfold. No one noticed him, but Alina did, even mid-turn. She caught his face. He hadn't changed. The same man who once pulled strings to end her career was back, watching, waiting, maybe even planning something again. The tension in the room grew heavier with every note. Alina could feel the past closing in from all sides. jealousy from Isabella, guilt from Maya, hesitation from Mr. Cade, and the shadow of the man who once controlled everything. One wrong step now could destroy everything. But the right one could turn this entire company upside down. And with the gala performance just days away, the moment of truth was coming faster than anyone was ready for. Alina didn't break stride, but her eyes locked with his for just a second too long. The man in the balcony, cold, calculating, exactly as she remembered, was here for a reason. He hadn't just come to watch. He never did anything without purpose. Her chest tightened, not from the dance, but from the weight of what his presence could mean. He was the one who had buried her career with a single phone call. And now he was back, smiling as if he already knew how this story would end. Backstage, Maya stepped away from the others, her hands shaking. She had kept quiet for too long. Years ago, she'd overheard the conversation, the one where Alina's scholarship was pulled, her name erased from programs, her opportunities vanished overnight. All for rejecting the very same man now sitting in the balcony like nothing had happened. But what truly twisted the knife was that the ballet company had gone along with it. Not one person spoke up for her, not even Maya. And now, as Alina risked everything to reclaim her place, Maya felt like she owed more than just an apology. She owed the truth. Isabella stormed down the hallway, ignoring the pain in her ankle, her thoughts spinning. She couldn't understand how this was happening. The company had always favored her. She had earned their respect, but now they looked at Alina like she was some kind of savior. And worse, the lead role, the one Isabella had worked years to protect, was now being reconsidered. Whispers in the dressing room hinted at a recasting. Unofficial, but real. The tension between them was no longer quiet. It was explosive. Then came the twist no one saw coming. A leaked rehearsal video. Alina's performance had hit social media, not from the company's account, but from a private one. The video went viral within hours. Dancers, critics, even former directors began commenting. Words like unreal talent, return of a legend, and why was she ever missing filled the comments. Overnight, the